Chapter 9. The Writing on the Wall. What's going on here? Going on. Attracted no doubt by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came shouldering his way through the crowd. He saw Miss Norris and fell back, covering his face in horror. My cat, what happened to Miss Norris? He shrieked, and his popping eyes fell on Harry. You, he screeched. You have murdered my cat. You have killed her. I'll kill you. I'll. Arcus. Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In the second, he had swept past Harry, Ron, and Hermione and detached Miss Norris from the porch bracket. Come with me, Argus, he said, Filch. You too, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, and Miss Granger. Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is nearest headmaster, just upstairs. Please feel free. Thank you, Gilroy, said Dumbledore. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart, looking excited and important, hurried after Dumbledore. So did Professor McGonagall and Snape. As they entered Lockhart's darkened office, there was a flurry of movement across the walls. Harry saw several of the Lockharts in the picture dogging out of the sight. They were here in rollers. The real Lockhart laid the candle on his desk and stood back. Dumbledore laid Miss Norris on the polished surface and began to examine her. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged tense looks and sank into chairs outside the pool of candlelight watching. The tip of Dumbledore's long crooked nose was barely an inch from Mrs. Norris' fur. He was looking at her closely through his half-moon spectacles, his long finger gently prodding and poking. Professor McGonagall was bent almost as close, her eyes narrowed. Snape loomed behind them, half in shadow, wearing a most peculiar expression. He was as tough, he was trying hard not to smile. And Lockhart was hovering around all of them, making suggestions. It was definitely a curse that killed her. Probably the Transmogrian torch. I have seen it used many times, so unlucky I wasn't there. I know the very counter cause that would have saved her. Lockhart's comments were punctured by Filch's dry racing sobs. He was slumped in a chair by a desk, unable to look at Miss Norris, his face in his hand, much as he distrusted Filch. Harry couldn't help feeling a bit sorry for him, though not nearly as sorry as he felt for himself. If Dumbledore believed Filch, he would be expelled for sure. Dumbledore was now muttering strange words under his breath and tapping Mrs. Norris with his wand, but nothing happened. She continued to look as tough as she had been recently stuffed. I remember something very similar happening in Waganga, said Lockhart, a series of attacks. The full story is in my autobiography. I was able to provide the townfolk with various amulets which cleared the matter up at once. The photograph of Lockhart on the walls were all nodding in agreement as he would talk. One of them had forgotten to remove his hairnet. At last Dumbledore straightened up. She is not dead, Argus, he said softly. Lockhart stopped abruptly in the middle of counting of the number murder he had prevented. Not dead, shocked Filch, looking through his fingers at Miss Norris, but why she is all stiff and frozen. He has been petrified, said Dumbledore. Oh, I thought so, said Lockhart. But how I cannot say, ask him, shrieked Filch, turning his blotched and strained face to Harry. No second year could have done this, said Dumbledore firmly. Would take dark magic of the most advanced. He did it. He did it. Filch spat his pouchy face, purpling. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He found in my office. He knows I am a Filch face walked horrible. He knows I'm a squib. He finished. I never touched Mrs. Norris. Harry said loudly, uncomfortably aware of everyone looking at him, including all the lockout on walls. And I don't even know what a squid is. Rubbish, sneered Flitch. He saw my quick spell letter. If I might speak, headmaster, said Snape from the shadow, and Harry's sense for foreboding increased. He was sure nothing Snape had to do was going to do him any good. Potter and his friends may have simply been in the wrong place at wrong time, he said, a slight sneer curling his mouth as though he doubted it. But we do have a set of suspicious circumstances here. Why was he in the upstairs corridor at all? Why wasn't he at Halloween's feast? Harry, Ron, and Hermione all launched into an explanation about the death day party. There were hundreds of ghosts, they'll tell you we were there. But why not join the feast afterwards? Said Snape, his black eyes glittering in the candlelight. Why go up to that corridor? Ron and Hermione looked at Harry because Harry said, his heart thumping very fast. Something told him it would sound very far-fetched if he told them he had been led there by the bodiless voice no one but he could hear. Because we were tired and want to go to bed, he said without any supper, said Snape, a triumphant smile flickering across his gaunt face. I didn't think ghosts provide food fit for living people at their parties. We weren't hungry, said Ron loudly as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Snape's nasty smile widened. I suggested, Headmaster, that Potter is not being entirely truthful, he said. It might be a good idea if he were deprived of certain privileges until he is ready to tell us the whole story. I personally feel he should be taken off the Gryffindor's Quidditch team until he is ready to be honest. Really, Severus, said Professor McGonagall sharply. I see no reason to stop the boy playing Quidditch. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. There is no evidence at all that Potter has done anything wrong. Dumbledore was giving Harry a searching look. His twinkling light blue gaze made Harry feel as though he were being x-rayed. Innocent until proven guilty, Severus, he said firmly. Snape looked furious, so did Filch. My cat has been petrified. He shrieked, his eyes popping. I want to see some punishment. We will be able to cure her, Argus, said Dumbledore patiently. Professor Sprout recently managed to procure some mandrakes. As soon as they have reached their full size, I will have a potion made that will review Miss Norris. I'll make it Lockhart butter in. I must have done it 100 times. I could wipe up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep. Excuse me, said Snape icily, but I believe I am the potion master at this school. There was a very awkward pause. You may go, Dumbledore said to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They went as quickly as they could without actually running. When he were a floor up from Lockhart's office, they turned into an empty classroom and closed the door quickly behind them. Harry squinted at his friend's darkened face. Do you think I should have told them about that voice I heard? No, said Ron without hesitation. Hearing voice no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the Wizardian world. Something in Ron's voice made Harry ask, You do believe me, don't you? Course I do, said Ron quickly, but you must admit it's a wizard. No, it's weird, said Harry, the whole thing weird. What was that writing on the wall about the chamber has been opened? What's that supposed to mean? You know, it's ring a sort of bell, said Ron slowly. I think someone told me a story about a secret chamber at Hogwarts once. Might have been Bill. And what on earth, Squib, said Harry. To his surprise, Ron stifled a snigger. Well, it's not funny really, but as it's Fleech, he said a squib is someone who was born into a Wizardian family but hasn't got any magical power. Of a opposite of Muggle-born wizards, but squibs are quite unusual. If Fletch is trying to learn magic from a quick spell course, I reckon he must be a squib. It would explain a lot, like why he hates students so much. Ron gave a satisfied smile. He's bitter. A clock chimed somewhere. Midnight, said Harry. We had better get to the bed before Snape comes along and tries to frame us for something else. For a few days, the school could talk a little else, but the attack on Miss Norris, which kept it fresh in every way's mind by pacing the spot where she had been attacked, as though he thought the attacker might come back. Harry had seen him scrubbing the message on the wall with Miss Scott's all-purpose magical mace remover, but to one no effect. The words still gleamed as brightly as ever on the stone. When Flitch wasn't guarding the sense of the crime, he was skulking red-eyed through the corridors, launching out as unsuspecting students and trying to put them in detention for things like breathing loudly and looking happy. Ginny Weasley seemed very disturbed by Miss Norris' fate. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. But you haven't really got to know Miss Norris, Ron told her brassingly. Honestly, we are much better off without her. Ginny's lip trembled. Stuff like this doesn't often happen at Hogwarts. Ron assured her they'll catch the Manica who did it and have him out of here in no time. I just hope he's got time to petrify Fletch before he's expelled. I'm only joking, Ron added hastily as Ginny blanched. The attack had also had an effect on Hermione. It was quite usual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading, but she was not doing almost nothing else. Nor could Harry and Ron get much response from her when they asked what she was up to. And not until the following Wednesday did they find out. Harry had been held back in the potion where Snape had made him stay behind a scrap cubworm of the desk. After a hurried lunch, he went upstairs to meet Ron in the library and saw Justin Flitzley, the Hufflepuff boy from herbology, coming toward him. Harry had just opened his mouth to say hello when Justin caught sight of him, turned abruptly, and sped off in the opposite direction. Harry found Ron at the back of the library measuring his history of magic homework. Professor Beans had asked for the foot-long competition on the medieval assembly of European wizards. I don't believe it. I'm still 8 inches short, said Ron furiously, letting go of his parchment which sprang back into a roll. And Hermione is done 4 feet 7 inches and her writing is tiny. Where is she? Asked Harry, grabbing the tape measure and unrolling his own homework. We are over there, said Ron, pointing along the sleeves. Looking for another book. I think she is trying to read the whole library before Christmas. He told Ron about Justin Fletchley running away from him. Don't know why you cared. I thought he was a bit of an idiot, said Ron, scribbling away, making his writing as large as possible, all that junk about Lockhart being so great. Hermione emerged from between the bookshelves. She looked irritable and at last seemed ready to talk to them. All the copies of Hogwarts a history have been taken out, she said, sitting down next to Harry and Ron, and they are a 2-week waiting list. I wish I hadn't left my copy at home, but I couldn't fit it in my trunk with all the Lockhart's books. Why do you want it? Said Harry. Same reason everyone else wanted, said Hermione, to read up on the legend of the Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip. And I can't find the stories anywhere else. Hermione, let me read your composition, said Ron, desperately checking his watch. No, I won't, said Hermione, suddenly severed. You have had 10 days to finish it. I only need another 2 inch, come on. The bell rang. Ron and Hermione laid way to history of magic bickering. History of magic was the dullest subject on their schedule. Professor Beans, who taught it, was their only ghost teacher, and the most exciting thing that ever happened in his class was his entering the room through the backboard. Ancient and shriveled people said he hadn't noticed he was late. He had simply got up to teach one day and left his body behind him in an armchair in front of the staff room fire. His routine had not varied in the slightest since. Today was as boring as ever. Professor Bean opened his notes and began to read in flat drawn like an old vacuum cleaner until nearly everyone in the class was asleep, occasionally coming too long enough to copy down a name or date, then falling asleep again. He had been speaking for half an hour when something happened that had never happened before. Hermione put up her hand. Professor Bean glanced up in the middle of deadly dull lecture on the International Warlock Convention on 1289, looked amazed. Miss Granger, Professor, I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets, said Hermione in a clear voice. Dean Thomas, who had been sitting with his mouth hanging open, gazing out of the window, jerked out of his trace. Lavender Brown's head came up off her arm and Neville Longbottom elbow slipped off his desk. Professor Bean blinked. My subject is history of magic, he said in his dry, wheezy voice. I deal with facts, Miss Granger, not myth and legends. Cleared his throat with a small noise like chalk chapping and continued. In September of that year, I subcommit of Sardian sorcerers. He stuttered to a halt. Hermione's hand was waving in the air. Miss Grant, please. Sir, don't legends always have a basis in fact? Professor Bean was looking at her in such amazement. Harry was sure no student had ever interrupted him before, alive or dead. Well, said Professor Bean slowly. Yes, one could argue that, I suppose. He stared at Hermione as though he had never been seen a student properly before. However, the legends of which you speak in such a very sensational, even ludicrous tale, but the whole class was now hanging on Professor Bean's every word. He looked dimly at them all, every face turned to his. He could tell he was completely thrown by such an unusual show of interest. Oh, very well, he said slowly. Let me see. The Chamber of Secrets. You all know, of course, that Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago. The precise date is uncertain by the four greatest witches and wizards of the age. The four schoolhouses are named after them: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rona Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They built this castle together, far from prying Muggle eyes. It was an age when magic was feared by common people and witches and wizards suffered much cautions. He paused, gazed blearily around the room, and continued. For a few years, the founder worked in harmony together, seeking out youngsters who showed signs of magic and bringing them to the castle to be educated. But then disagreements sprang up between them. A rift began to grow between Slytherin and the others. Slytherin wished to be more selective about the student admitted to Hogwarts. He believed that magical learning should be kept within all magic families. He disliked talking students of Muggle parents, believed them to be untrustworthy. After a while, there was a serious argument on the subject between Slytherin and Gryffindor, and Slytherin left the school. Before Professor Bean paused again, pursing his lips, looking like a wrinkled old tortoise. Reliable history sources tell us this much, he said, but these honest facts have been obscured by the fanciful legend of the Chamber of Secrets. The story goes that Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in the castle of which the other founder knew nothing. Slytherin, according to the legend, sealed the Chamber of Secrets so that none would be able to open it until his own true hire arrived at school. The hire alone would be able to unseal the Chamber of Secrets, unleash the horror within, and use it to purge the school of all who were unworthy to study magic. There was a silence as he finished telling the story, but it wasn't the usual sleepy silence that filled Professor Bean's class. There was unease in the air as everyone continued to watch him, hoping for more. Professor Bean looked faintly annoyed. The whole thing is arrant nonsense, of course, he said. Naturally, the school has been searched for evidence of such a chamber many times, but the most learned witch and wizards does not exist a tale told to frighten the gullible. Hermione's hand was back in the air. Sir, what exactly do you mean by the horror within the chamber? That is believed to be some sort of monster which the higher of Slytherin alone can control. Professor Beans in his dry, ready voice. The class exchanged nervous look. I tell you, the thing does not exist, said Professor Beans, shuffling his note. There is no chamber and no monster. But sir, said Seamus Finnegan, the chamber can only be opened by Slytherin's two higher. No one else will be able to find it. Will they? Nonsense, O'Flantry, said Professor Beans in an aggravated tone. If a long succession of Hogwarts headmaster and headmistress haven't found the thing, Professor, piped up Parvati Patil, you would probably have to use dark magic to open it. Just because a wizard doesn't use dark magic doesn't mean he can't miss any feather. Professor Binns, I repeat, the like of Dumbledore, but maybe you have got to be related to Slytherin. So Dumbledore couldn't, began being Thomas, but Professor Bean had enough. Will do, he said sharply. It is a myth. It does not exist. There is not a shred of evidence that Slytherin ever built so much as secret broom cupboard. I regret telling you such a foolish story. We will return off you please to history, to solid, believable, verified fact. And within 5 minutes the class had sunk back into its usual torpor. I always knew Salazar Slytherin was a twisted old loony, Ron told Harry and Hermione as they fought their way through the teeming corridor. At the way through the teeming corridor at the end of the lesson to drop off their bags before dinner. I never knew he started all their pure blood stuff. I wouldn't be in his house if you paid me. Honestly, if the sorting hat had tried to put me in Slytherin, I had caught the train straight back home. Hermione nodded fervently, but Harry didn't say anything. His stomach had just dropped unpleasantly. Harry had never told Ron and Hermione that the sorting hat had seriously considered putting him in Slytherin. He could remember, as though it was yesterday, the small voice that had spoken in his ear when he had placed the hat on his head a year before. You could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. But Harry, who had already heard of Slytherin House's reputation for turning to dark wizard, had thought desperately not Slytherin, and the hat had said, oh well, if you are sure, better be Gryffindor. As they were shuttled along in the throng, Colin Creevy went past. Here, Harry. Follow Colin, said Harry automatically. Harry, a boy in my class has been saying you are. Colin was so small he couldn't fight against the tide of people bearing him out toward the great hall. They heard him squeak, see you, Harry, and he was gone. boy in his class saying about you, Hermione wondered. That I'm Slytherin's higher. I expect, said Harry, his stomach dropping another inch or so as he suddenly remembered the way Justin Fletchley had run away from him at lunchtime. Well, here will believe anything, said Ron in disgust. The crowd thinned and they were able to climb the next staircase without difficulty. Do you really think there is a chamber of secret? Ron asked Hermione. I don't know, she said, frowning. Dumbledore couldn't cure Miss Norris, and that make me think that whatever attacked her might not be well human. As she spoke, they turned a corner and found themselves at the end of a very corridor where the attack had happened. They stopped and looked. The scene was just as it had been at that night, except that there was no stiff cat hanging from the court bracket, and the empty chair stood against the wall bearing the message, the chamber of secret has been opened. Sir Flitch has been keeping guard, Ron muttered. They looked at each other. The corridor was deserted. Can't hurt to have a poke around, said Harry, dropping his bag and getting to his hands and knees so that he could crawl along searching for clues. Scorch marks, he said, here and here. And look at this, said Hermione. This is funny. Harry got up and crossed to the window next to the message on the wall. Hermione was pointing at the topmost pane, where around 20 spiders were skulking, apparently fighting to get through a small crack. A long silvery thread was straggling like a rope, as though they had all climbed it in their hurry to get outside. Have you ever seen spiders act like that? Said Hermione wonderingly. No, said Harry. Have you, Ron? Ron. He looked over his shoulder. Ron was standing well back and seemed to be fighting the impulse to run. What's up? Said Harry. I don't like spiders, said Ron tensely. I never knew that, said Hermione, looking at Ron in surprise. You have used spiders in potion lots of time. I don't mind them dead, said Ron, who was carefully looking anywhere but at the window. I just don't like the way they move, Hermione giggled. It's not funny, said Ron furiously. If you must know, when I was three, Fred turned my teddy bear into a great big fleechy spider because I broke his toy broomstick. You wouldn't like them either if you've been holding your beer and suddenly it was too many legs and he broke off. Shuddering, Harmony was obviously still trying not to laugh, feeling they had better get off the subject. Harry said, remember all that water on the floor? Where did that came from? Someone's mopping it up. It was about here, said Ron, recovering himself to walk a few paces past Fleet's chair and pointing level with the school. He reached for the brass doorknob, but suddenly withdrew his hand as though he had been burnt. What's the matter? Said Harry. Can't go in there, said Ron gruffly. That's a girl toilet. Oh, Ron, there won't be anyone in there, said Hermione, standing up and coming over. That's Morning Martell's place. Come on, let's have a look. And ignoring the large out of order sign, she opened the door. It was the gloomiest, most depressing bathroom Harry had ever set foot in. Under a large cracked and spotted mirror were a row of chipped sinks. The floor was damp and reflected the dull light given off by the stubs of a few candles burning low in their holders. The wooden door to the stall were flaking and scratched, and one of them was dangling off its hinges. Hermione put her finger to her lip and set off toward the end stall. When she reached it to said, Hello Martel, how are you? Harry and Ron went to look. Morning Martel was floating above the tank of the toilet, picking a spot on her chin. This is a girl's bathroom, she said, eyeing Ron and Harry suspiciously. There is no girls, said Harmony agreed. I just wanted to show them how Nice it is here. She waved vaguely at the dirty old mirror and the damp floor, asked her if she saw anything. Harry mounted at Hermione. What are you whispering? Said Myrtle, staring at him. Nothing, said Harry quickly. We wanted to ask. I wish people would stop talking behind my back, said Myrtle in a voice choked with fear. I do have feeling, you know, even if I am dead. Myrtle, no one wants to upset you, said Hermione. Harry only. No one wants to upset, that's a good one, howled Martin. My life was nothing but misery at this place, and now people come along running my death. We wanted to ask you if you are seen anything funny lately, said Harmony quickly, because a cat was attacked right outside your front door on Halloween. Did you see anyone near here that night? Said Harry. I wasn't paying attention, said Martha dramatically. You upset me so much that I came here and tried to kill myself. Then of course I remember that I am already dead, said Ron hopefully. Martel gave a tragic sob, rose up in the air, turned over and dived headfirst into the toilet, splashing water all over them and vanishing from sight, although from the direction of her muffled slope she had come the rest somewhere in the U-bend. Harry and Ron stood with their mouth open, but Hermione struggled wearily and said honestly, that was almost cheerful for Martel. Come on, let's go. Harry had barely closed the door on Martel's gurgling soap when a loud voice made all three of them jump. Ron! Percy Weasley had stopped dead at the head of their stair, perfect beige, aglim, an expression of complete shock on his face. That's a girl bathroom, he gasped. What were you? Just having a look around. Ron struggled. Clues, you know. Percy spoke in a manner that reminded Harry forcefully of Miss Weasley. Get away from there, Percy said, striding towards them and straining to bustle them along, flapping his arm. Don't you care what this look like, coming back here while everyone's at dinner? Why shouldn't we be here? Said Ron hotly, stopping short and glaring at Percy. Listen, we never laid a finger on that cat. That's what I told Ginny, said Percy fiercely, but she still seemed to think you are going to be expelled. I have never seen her so upset, crying her eyes out. You might think of her. All the first year are thoroughly overexcited by this business. You don't care about Ginny, said Ron, whose ear we are now reading. You are just worried I am going to mess up your chance of being head boy. 5 points from Gryffindor, Percy said tersely, fingering his perfect badge, and I hope it teaches you a lesson. No more detective work, or I'll write to Mom. And he strode off, he back off his neck as red as Ron's ear. Harry, Ron, and Hermione chose sit as far as possible from Percy in the common room that night. Ron was still in a very bad temper and kept blotting his charm homework when he reached absently from his wand to remove the smudges. It ignited the parchment, coming almost as much as his homework. Ron slammed the standard book of spell grade 2 shut. To Harry's surprise, Hermione followed suit. Who can it be, though? She said in a quiet voice, as though counting a conversation they had just been having. Who had wanted to frighten all them squid and muggle-born out of Hogwarts? Let's think, said Ron in most puzzlement. Who do we know think muggle-born are scum? He looked at Hermione. Hermione looked back unconvinced. If you are talking about Malfoy, of course I am, said Ron. You heard him. You'll be next, Mudblood. Come on, you have only got to look at his foul rat face to know it him. Malfoy, the heir of Slytherin, said Hermione skeptically. Look at his family, said Harry, closing his book too. The whole lot of them have been in Slytherin. He is always boasting about it. They would easily be Slytherin's descendants. His father is definitely evil enough. They could have had the key to the Chamber of Secrets for centuries, said Ron, handing it down farther to son. Well, said Harmony cautiously. I suppose it's possible. But how do we prove it? Said Harry darkly. There might be a way, said Harmony slowly, dropping her voice still further with a quick glance across the room at Percy. Yes, it would be difficult and dangerous, very dangerous. We'll be breaking about 50 school rules, I expect. If in a month or so you feel like explaining, you will let us know, won't you? Said Ron irritably. All right, said Harmony coldly. What we had need to do is get inside the Slytherin's common room and ask Malfoy a few questions without him realizing it. That's impossible, Harry said as Ron laughed. No, it's not, said Hermione. All we had need would be some polyjuice potion. What's that? Said Ron and Harry together. Snape mentioned it in a class a few weeks ago. Do you think we have got nothing better to do in potion than listen to Snape mutter Ron? It transforms you into somebody else. Think about it. He could change into three of Slytherins. No one would know it was us. Malfoy would probably tell us anything. He's probably boasting about it in the Slytherin's common room right now if only we could hear him. This polyjuice stuff sounds a bit doggy to me, said Ron, frowning. What if we were stuck looking like three of Slytherins forever? I wear off after a while, said Hermione, waving her wand impatiently, but getting hold on the recipe will be very difficult. Snape said it was a book called Most Potent Potion and it's bound to be in the restricted section of library. There was only one way to get out a book from the restricted section. You need to sign a note of permission from teacher. Hard to see why we had wanted the book, really said Ron, if we aren't going to try and make a one-off potion. I think, said Hermione, that if we made it sound as though we were just interested in the theory, we might stand chance. Oh, come on, no teacher's going to fall for that, said Ron. They had have to be really thick. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.